Hello and welcome to yet another East Africa Focus debate. My name is Arnold Segoa, and this one will be focusing on the quest for sustainable growth for East Africa. Now, Africa has seen growth in double-digit growth for the past decade. Countries like Ethiopia, Democratic Republic of Congo, Cote d'Ivoire, even Rwanda have been revered with growth way above 10% of GDP. But the story is changing. Commodities are low, oil is struggling, energy deficits, and this is where we are in 2016. I am joined by a great panel. On my left, we do have Ms. Bia Perez from the Coca-Cola. She is the Chief Sustainability Officer. Next to her, we do have Tumi Chameu from Ericsson, the Vice President for Marketing and Strategy at Ericsson. Not forgetting Andreas Spies, who is the CEO and founder for Solar Kiosk. To start the conversation off, is this the next frontier for Africa? Partnerships that President Paul Kagame was going on about at the World Economic Forum. Is partnering the next frontier for Africa's growth? Bia, let's start off with you.
Yes, we believe so. So at Coca-Cola, we've been in Africa for over 90 years. And you might have heard that we recently announced an investment of $17 billion between 2010 and 2020. We believe there's tremendous opportunity, but it cannot be done alone. It requires, like President Kagame had said, the government to have a seat at the table, civil society, partnerships like the ones you see here today with other businesses, and NGOs all coming together to look at what is the opportunity and how do we work together to drive progress.
Tumi, handing over to you, let's talk about partnerships, yes, but inclusive growth with the private sector. We have seen Ericsson on the African continent for over 100 years. What is the next step for Ericsson?
Yes, absolutely. So we've also been around Africa for 120 years, operating in 48 countries. And one of the things that we see is that in order to drive growth on the continent, it is imperative that inclusion and empowerment is part of the agenda. And it's not just something that is the responsibility of government alone. It is important that various organizations see that for sustainable development, it is important that we extend our partnership, we work off our strengths, and we ensure that we are working in driving similar agendas that grow the society and ensure that there's more inclusion for growth to happen, not just in big cities, but also at grassroots levels. And this, again, is the partnership that this engagement also affords.
Andreas, we are talking on a continent here where over 634 million people live in darkness. What is the next step for Africa, if at all? Growth without electricity is a myth, as we know.
That's why we're in this space, because Germany has always been very passionate about renewable energies. We believe that now is the time that renewable energy also in rural and off-grid areas in Africa can scale. It's feasible, it's economically viable, and it solves problems that we are facing, by the way, not only in Africa, but globally, because we are all facing climate change, and we need to solve it together. And that's why we're in this space.
Let's talk about women empowerment. As we speak right now, Coca-Cola has rolled out many initiatives, Ericsson too, and it is very clear that you do empower women, and it is statistical that you do empower women.
Yes.
And you do have 1.5% of GDP, at least in the near term. Where is Coca-Cola on this front?
Sure. We set a goal to empower 5 million women globally, economically within our value chain, and today we're at 1.2 million women economically empowered in 60 countries. I can tell you that out of that 1.2 million, over 600,000 come right here from Africa. And we're very excited to see that because, as we know, and not to say anything for the gentleman sitting here, but when a woman earns $1, we know through the UN studies, she gives 90 cents of that dollar back to support her community and education. And then there's a positive growth cycle that happens in her community.
Over 120 years that Ericsson has been here, what are some of the challenges that we do face in Africa at least?
Africa is a growing, it's a growing economy, it's a developing economy, and we will always face similar challenges in terms of ensuring that we create scale and that we operate in a faster way. However, we face various challenges in terms of getting everybody, I think, on board at the same time and operating in a faster way. But it's something that we believe, through ICT, we should be able to address some of these challenges in a faster way because Africa has that opportunity to leapfrog It is important that we do not take the route that was once taken, and that we find faster ways to solutions and creating scale.
Ben, just to hand over to you, Andreas, we do have a problem here in Africa, which happens to be governance. As an entrepreneur, founder for a solar kiosk, what are some of the challenges that you faced on that front, and how do you overcome some of these?
That's a good question. Governance is a challenge everywhere. It's just happening on different scale and different details. So I wouldn't say that this is a typical African issue that you're facing. It's an issue that entrepreneurs like myself, we can rave about this forever. So we at Solar Kiosk, we're a small company. So we like to keep a low profile. We like to be very much on the ground. We like to embrace the community. We very much work with the local community together. And that's a good and sustainable way how to tackle challenges that are usually connected to governance.
To me, the ICT divide on the continent is immense. I mean, we're looking at internet penetration at barely 20% on the continent. Isn't this a problem that you are facing, and how do you plan to address some of these issues?
I think one of the things that we should try to also celebrate is to see just how far we've come. It took us 100 years for us to connect 1 billion places. It took us 25 years for us to connect 5 billion people.
Yes.
And for the future, we see that by 2021, it's going to take us, we're going to be connecting at least 28 billion devices. So the pace of change is happening at a very, very fast rate, and it will never be this slow. A lot of change is happening, yes. And it is important that we lower the barriers of adoption. The prices for the various devices get reduced so that people can actually have them in their hands and utilize them to create that inclusion, such as mobile banking, ensuring that they can also revolutionize their own industries. SMEs are also brought on board. Education. There's a lot of elements in terms of the impact that ICT can have. And when you look at the Sustainable Development Goals, ICT, we see that it will impact on all of them. So we have come quite a long way, and there's still a long way to go. But change is happening so fast, so it's important that we remain on that path and we don't get left behind as a continent.
And I understand that President Kagame is also the co-chair of the Broadband Commission. Yeah. So I think Rwanda has a special advantage
Correct.
there in really connecting the people here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I want to touch something that is very, very dear to me, and it happens to be the fact that, yes, the continent has been growing. I want to focus on Sub-Saharan Africa. It has been growing, yes. But is the growth sustainable? And the most important question for me that I want to hand over to all of you is it inclusive? Maybe let me start with you, B.
Sure. You know, I'd say that I think we know that growth happens in cycles. And so Africa, if you look at Africa and the opportunity that still exists here, there's still a lot more of untapped opportunity that companies like ourselves still realize. And so sometimes it might be hard when you're in the middle of maybe a little bit of a down cycle to see that it's about to go back up. But we believe that it's about to go back up. And it's inclusive because if you look at projects like EcoCenter, why we're here today, it started with the society. What does that society and that individual community need? And talking to the people about their needs. And I credit really President Kagame and companies like Ericsson, Solar Kiosk, and Coca-Cola working together to say, let's put people at the center of the debate and let's make sure that they're the ones benefiting while the rest of us are leveraging the opportunities for growth.
Sustainable and inclusive growth?
Absolutely. You cannot empower if you don't include. And 70% of the population still don't have access to the financial services, the bricks and mortar. Right. We see that also 70% of the population also live in rural areas. So the commercial models, I think, traditionally have been quite hard for a number of organizations to extend some of the services then to these communities. And we talk about smart cities, and Rwanda is driving that quite strongly, and now with the Smart Africa Alliance, we see that that will also be exported into other countries. However, we should also then also look at smart villages. Yes. How do we take similar type of practices collectively so that it makes a commercially viable solution and also empower the communities for broader inclusion?
Andreas?
I think Tumi said something intriguing. You were referring to leapfrogging, and I believe that technology allows us to leapfrog in this continent, and I adore you for it. Speaking of the mobile telecom revolution that happened 15 years ago, I still cannot pay with mobile money in my country. I adore the African entrepreneurial spirit for it. For me, it's very sustainable. The question of inclusive growth, that is something that I will not judge from a political point of view, but I will tell you that it's an enormous opportunity to bring inclusive growth to the population. And we are all in this together, and we are all tackling this together, and that's very exciting times for us.
In Davos earlier on this year at the World Economic Forum, there was talk of the fourth industrial revolution.
Yes.
And of course, questions were being asked when we came back here to Africa about, is it time for Africa to actually be considering a fourth industrial revolution when, well, we talked about the electricity. And just 2 weeks ago, there was a report that girls in Zambia still miss school when it's that time of the month. Yeah. So aren't we skipping a phase to be thinking of a smart Africa? Yeah, aren't we supposed to go gradually the same way we had Edison and Ford, and it took steps and phases? Please.
Sure. I mean, our view at Coca-Cola is you have to be able to multitask and do both at the same time. So while you're addressing the basic needs, which are water, electricity, connectivity, education, you have to also think forward and have a vision and purpose in mind for where you want to take the country and what society is going to need in the future. And that's why Africa, I think, has been able to leapfrog so many, because think about connectivity. It didn't necessarily wait to build infrastructure and landlines and lay down a lot of fiber. It went right to mobile connectivity using satellites, which has enabled people to have, out of the 4 billion cell phones plus that exist today, the majority are right here throughout Africa. And it's because of the fact that the governments and the nations and the 54 countries moved forward towards vision and purpose of connecting society while still working with partnerships to build basic infrastructure. So I don't think we can afford to wait. I think we have to do both.
Yeah.
So only your views do on the same.
I think it's the same. It's similar views. It cannot be business as usual.
No.
Definitely, because if we take too long to have that priority list to say that one social issue is more important than another, we're going to miss the boat, and the divide then for our continent will be much, much deeper. And the repercussions for us then, we will be then left behind really as a continent. So we need to embrace and act collectively. Now is the time for action. I loved at the end of the World Economic Forum when the South African minister, finance minister, Pravin Gordhan, when he ended the session, he said, when we come back at the next WEF, we should not be talking about what are the things that we should be doing. This is a progress check. It's a progress check for us to see how far are we coming, and we need to put all of these issues. It's a parallel stream, and we need to act fast.
Yes.
Policy, regulatory issues, manufacturing, all of the various ecosystem players need to come together.
Maybe just before you get into the conversation, you mentioned policy, and as an entrepreneur, I get the feeling that working across Africa, and I'm sure very many countries, you do get frustrated when it takes ages for something to actually get through. How do you work around that?
My experience is very often that it doesn't take ages, but it goes much faster. I mean, I come from a country where we really take our time. So I'm sometimes, I'm intrigued by the pace, especially the entrepreneurial space, in which we can roll out our solutions here. Mind you, we have 3 manufacturing capacities in Africa with our company. It's a small company, but we have 3 manufacturing plants, and they are manufacturing our units, which we then turn into the eco-centers, and we work together on them. And they have machine-to-machine capacity, so they're by no means simple technology. They're quite advanced, and we get it done. And I would say in Germany, it would have taken us maybe twice as long to get it done. So if there's the will for development, things do get done.
Talking about sustainable growth and the quest for at least Africa, do you get the sense that where we are right now in 2016, growth cannot be elusive of telecom companies? Do you get that sense? And maybe mobile applications and mobile money, which it has blown up in Africa. Do you get the sense that the two are mutually inclusive right now, for lack of a better word?
I think it's an enabler, but I'll let the expert over here.
It's absolutely an enabler. Right now, industries are being transformed. We are seeing technologies such as in mobility, we're seeing broadband, and we're seeing also 5G. These will inherently change the way that industries see themselves. It creates efficiencies, but at the same time, it also disrupts some of these services. So they have to rethink the way in which they engage, because consumers themselves start to become innovators. So it's a co-innovation system that now we're living in. So they're trying to solve issues, and industries are forced to come back and say, with all these technologies available to us, how do we then improve services for them to become more affordable and inclusive, going back to the inclusive discussion. So technology is now center point to each industry, and any industry that ignores it will be left behind.
Andreas, I'm sure you haven't been left behind.
Yeah, well, I'm very grateful for the... No, I don't. I love to leave the space to the ladies. But let me be clear here. Without connectivity, our solution would never work. So we need the connectivity. We need the mobile communication to be in the places that we operate. We need it so badly. We need it for our technology, but we need it also for all the various businesses that we're currently rolling out. And it's a very exciting space. It's something that has not been done before. There's no school book for it, and we're doing it together. Again, we're sitting together so many times, and it's this entrepreneurial spirit. And yes, these are big names, and they have a long-standing history, but they have the adaptivity to just sit together and say, how can we solve this issue? And then we do it.
Do you get the sense that in order to catalyze social enterprise, big names like yourselves have to come together in the future, like what we're seeing at the Eco Center?
Well, I have a saying, I think sometimes big things can be small and small things can be big. And so I think it takes different entities that come together to play a key role. And that might be a big corporation, which could be a catalyst to bring others to the table, or might be an individual with a simple idea like Solar Kiosk. When we first met, Andreas, it wasn't a big corporation. It was an entrepreneurial partnership coming together with a big corporation and expertise we didn't have. And then enrolling other partnerships like Ericsson is what made it better, but at the same time, it was really critical to have the small, the big, the medium, and the most critical, really, the people who had the skill set to drive the particular solution.
To me?
I think what is important also for us as Ericsson is that we are starting to understand that it's not just going to be us that are going to be, we have a passion for addressing inclusion, the inclusion agenda, but it's not just going to be us that are going to be moving this agenda forward. The ecosystem is, it's critical, and sometimes we also have to be the ones that pioneer some of these engagements and take a risk and come together. And sometimes it does take a while for us to ensure that we are all on the same page. However, we iron those issues out and we charter forward. And this is just an example also, not only to organizations such as us, but also future organizations in terms of how do we bring our strengths and charter forward.
This is something that beat me from the get-go. You have Solar Kiosk, which is not really that big, just to be very kind. You do have Tumi here, Ericsson, 120 years on the continent. And you do have Coca-Cola. As we speak right now, it's only not sold, I guess, in North Korea. The rest of the countries are. Even Cuba opened up. So there's the big, the mighty, the titans, and there's Solar Kiosk, which is also doing what they do, what they understand. Is this the future? Is this the next frontier?
Well, one thing that I want to say is, even though I know we feel as a big corporation, we are still very local. We produce locally, we sell locally, we employ locally. And so that's what I think the beauty is when a big corporation like ourselves are part of the local fabric of the community. That's an enabler to being able to work with entrepreneurs that are on the ground and implementing partners.
To me?
I completely agree. The play space is quite broad. It's not just, again, the big organizations, and it's a credit that we can also give to Coca-Cola for having looked at the various players and brought all of us together to ensuring that the solution that we provide is also something that is formidable, that it can be replicated with speed. And again, the social entrepreneurship aspect, that's another element. For instance, when we look at the future adoption of mobile data, it requires that some of the content that is developed is local content. That means embracing and bringing forward various social entrepreneurs, etc., into the equation.
Do you agree with this, the future of a social enterprise?
Yeah, I do agree with this. Let me refer to a question real quick. There's companies who've been around for quite a while, but trade and commerce have been around since mankind existed. And the great thing about us as entrepreneurs is we don't think in hierarchies, but we think in opportunities. And whenever there's an opportunity, we go and get for it. And that is something that I love being an entrepreneur. For us, we don't think, oh, they are the big Coca-Cola guys, and you don't think, oh, they're the small solar kiosk guys, but they think we can do something together, and then we just do it. So much for that. And in regards to social enterprise, listen, if it is not a win-win, inclusive value proposition where everybody takes something away, it's not going to work. The times where you exclude people, they are over. We are in the time of integrating and including. Otherwise, we will not tackle the challenges that we are all facing.
Let's talk about, let me say, the Eco Center. Is this philanthropy that we've come to know before, that let's say Coca-Cola or Ericsson or Solar Kiosk, that they have a hand in maybe giving back to the community, or it is philanthropy? Is this what we are seeing here in the midterm?
No, it's not. We do have a foundation, and so we do a lot of great philanthropic work. This is a social enterprise, and so this is where vision and purpose and commerce have come together. It's the shared values, and I think that that's important. So where we all aligned was on the vision and purpose and working with society, and would we be able to drive real change? Is this a catalyst for change for that community? That's what made it important for us. In order to do that, we know that the commerce part is important for the woman entrepreneur who runs the unit. She has to make money to make this sustainable for her too. And we're proud of that aspect, that it works for both.
Yeah.
Tell me over to you.
For us, it's something very similar. However, it's about also testing out various business models. It is important, the Eco Center, so Ericsson is using a solution called Managed Rural Coverage, which uses a base station that uses lower energy, and it is something that allows us to ensure that we can showcase these solutions and how do they work, not only for opportunities such as this, but also for rural coverage. This is critical in terms of that inclusion. And so it is also something that we see beyond just the philanthropy agenda, but also something to ensure that we can showcase and test in the market.
I want to hear what Andreas has to say, especially since he's the entrepreneur at the table.
Well, if I told my partners that this is a philanthropy, they wouldn't be too happy. We have put a lot of money and sweat into this, and we certainly want to make a profit here, but we want to make a profit in a sustainable way. We refer to ourselves as impact investors. So for us, triple bottom line, which is economic, environmental, and social impact, is a currency. And that currency becomes more and more valuable because all of us, and that doesn't stop with businesses, it's also politicians, it's also NGOs, we all learn that whatever you do, it has to be sustainable, it has to be feasible, it has to be commercially viable, and it has to bring this impact.
Just a quick one before we go for a break. The economy has slowed down. I mean, globally, we're talking just this week, the World Bank revised the outlook for the globe from 3% to 2.4%. Is this a time to actually be moving that side?
This is a time to keep investing. We believe at Coca-Cola that it's even more important now to work with society to ensure that society is thriving, because while society is in desperate need of certain resources like water, electricity, connectivity, we can't back away. We have to ensure that since we have the resources to provide to these communities, and we know that they can be viable and sustainable, we have to do that.
To me, China is eating into, we're seeing a lot of competition from China. Is this a time Ericsson should be edging into this direction?
For us, again, it's also not about slowing down, the pace is going ridiculously fast. So yes, on one side we're seeing that industries are changing, technology is accelerating, but at the other side, yes, the economic challenges are also there. We see the pressures also with our own customer base. It's just about being very focused and choosing the various elements that we're going to focus on, and that is ensuring that broadband for all is accessible, because that drives GDP. And so we need to keep our eye on the price and not decelerate, because otherwise then it becomes a vicious circle and it's a lose-lose.
Definitely, Andreas, I know where you stand in this one. Over 600 million Africans live in the dark, and solar solutions are the future.
Absolutely.
So maybe just for you to
well,
push on.
There's two things that I would like to contribute. The one thing is I like very much what you said. And now it's a good time to invest, because whenever something slows down, usually you get it at a cheaper price, right? So it's as simple as that. So I get a lot of value for money. That's the first point. So a lot of people want to invest actually in Africa. They desire to invest, and they're looking for good projects and good partnerships like ours. That's the first thing. The second thing I would like to say, I am not so impressed with numbers, but I'm more impressed with results. Germany has had a GDP which is, or growth rates which are considerably slower and lower than the ones that you have just mentioned, and we're not doing too bad. So it is not only about a mathematical number, but it is about what do you do with it and how many people do you include in this growth. And that's what brings all of us to the table, because in the end of the day, we all want to serve the people, because we also want to make business with the people.
Welcome back to the East Africa Focus debate on the quest for sustainable growth on CNBC Africa First in Business Worldwide. I am Arnold Segoa, and on the panel joining me is B. Perez, the Chief Sustainability Officer for Coca-Cola. We also do have Tumi Chamiyu, the Vice President for Marketing and Strategy at Ericsson, not forgetting Mr. Andreas Spies, the founder and CEO for Solar Kiosk. We are here going on about partnerships, and this is one for the books, a partnership between Solar Kiosk, Ericsson, and Coca-Cola. What is the Eco Center?
The Eco Center, so it's Center for Community Center, and eco is Coke spelled backwards. So community center in a box, essentially. It's bringing utilities from water, electricity, connectivity to the local community, and at the same time within a business where a woman entrepreneur runs and sells goods and services out of the unit. It's not one size fits all. We have over 100 of them placed across Africa. We have 23 here in Rwanda, and the one we consider very special is Rwanda, where we're launching. That's really an ecosystem. So it's also a medical center side by side. It has a football pitch in the other area. And so it's a comprehensive community center, so a smart city maybe, as Tumi has said before. And it's something we're very proud of that we can do together.
Tumi, is Ericsson about to have partnerships of this kind?
We are always looking at partnering in terms of ensuring that we are creating social change. This is one of the partnerships, as I spoke about earlier, that we see that it can have really deep impact from a grassroots level, because it really goes into the empowering of women. And as you mentioned earlier, when you empower women, you really empower more than just one individual, but a whole community. So going forward, I mean, it's something that we are obviously need to iron out on what are the next steps? What does good look like?
Mm-hmm. Right. The Eco Center does have a water cleansing unit. It does have lights, which are solar powered. And all I can think of is maintenance. This is where Andreas can come in. Isn't this very expensive, to say the least?
It can be, if you haven't figured out your act before you start. And that's what we are known for. We take our time, and we better come up with something that works. Otherwise, we won't stay there for long. Yeah. So we did many years of R&D before we even went into the place. We silently piloted in 3 countries in very, very remote areas, very difficult to access. And only then we approached our partners and said, now we're ready, let's do this, and let's also talk about it. So how do we do the maintenance? So it's a mixture of physical, operational support on the ground, which is absolutely crucial, and by the way, creates more jobs. and it's a remote monitoring, which we have implemented in each of those eco-centers, for which we need connectivity. This is where Ericsson comes into place, and this is where all of this is becoming a bigger play, because that remote monitoring literally tells us pretty much whenever we do a sale of one of your beverages, we know about it, and whenever one of the system is in default mode, we know about it as well, and then we can fix it immediately. Because the community, they deserve 24/7 service, just like the people in the city. And that is something we all not compromise on.
Are we about to be seeing more renewable energy initiatives like this, Coca-Cola, Ericsson, and of course solar kiosk? Are we about to be seeing more of these rolled out? Smart cities.
That is, what you see now is just the beginning. And we are entrepreneurs, we keep a low profile. We first design, then we develop, and then we talk about it. But what I can tell you is that the technology has matured, that we can create off-grid, decentralized energy solutions which are connected via connectivity and which can be commercialized in a sustainable, impactful way with our big partners like the Coca-Cola company.
I want to hear from B right now, because definitely we need more off-grid solutions like this, which are very smart, do not need manning 24/7. In real time, you know what's going on. Are we about to be seeing these?
Yes, well, our vision is on eco-centers to have 177 of them coming up very soon, when we're, by third quarter of this year, all of them powered through solar energy. That's just one aspect of our renewable programs. We also have other cooler equipment that is all operated through solar energy, and we believe that that's what communities need. We have a couple stories on our Empowering Women initiative where one of the retail shopkeepers told us that not only did it benefit her business by having solar energy, but it was able to light the community, and then the kids could stay up and study and do their homework. And so when you look at the bigger picture, and that's what brought us together, was that vision and purpose around how do you enable society to do well? How do you allow those children, if they want to study, my children don't always want to study, but as parents they have to get them to be able to do the homework and to do the things that are good for them and good for the future of all of our societies.
I want to talk about the elephant in the room, and it has to be challenges. I'm sure you had numerous challenges. Dumi, let's start with you. What are some of the challenges that you did face coming up with such a framework?
I think with any new partnership, you will always find that there's challenges. I think just getting everybody aligned and ensuring that we are all having the same, we all have the same objectives. I think that's something that the vision, it's very similar. However, it's important that to walk through the plans and ensuring that the timelines, etc., are of similar natures. But with every challenge, there's obviously room for opportunities going forward. So, yes, I guess perhaps
Yes.
maybe you can elaborate a little bit more.
It's 90% planning and 10% on site. And what we have found is that it takes really hard work. I mean, it seems easy because we're three of us here together, we're getting along, we're about to celebrate. It took many months of really rolling up our sleeves and trying to understand what key roles should we each play. Looking at governments, there's plenty of partners that aren't even sitting here at the table today that are very much a part of this. Pentair, who provides the water solution. MedShare, who's helping us with the medical clinics. We have Philips, who's helping us do some of the lighting. And the list goes on. And so it's a highly complex initiative that requires us to have a lot of discussion in advance and sometimes disagreement, always aligning towards what is in the best interest of this project and the people.
Andreas, I want to hear your thought on the challenges, especially since, well, we do have the energy deficits, but how much are you churning out in terms of watts to start with?
Okay, so if you do the math, with the existing units, we are providing roughly around 400,000 kilowatt hours of energy annually. And now if you bring this to scale, then you can do your math and you can see how much energy can be provided in an off-grid decentralized context, because we all know that the central grid will not reach to all of those communities or only provide parts of these communities with grid-connected power. And there needs to be a solution for the other ones. You're referring to the 600 million Africans which are living in the dark. And only smart technology, smart Quality, affordable technology can change that. And solar, renewable energy, is part of that. In regards to challenges, where do you want me to start? Implementation, operation, maintenance, partnerships, including local stakeholders, including the community, communication, social behaviorism, and so forth and so forth. I think the biggest challenge, to be very honest, are we, because we made so many mistakes when we started this and we had to relearn and reinvent. But that's also maybe the advantage of a smaller company, because a smaller company is like a baby. We fall down, but we stand up again, and we learn, and we rapidly and fastly learn and evolve. And that's what makes it so exciting. And that's what also brings the value for bigger companies like yourselves, because you can help us to grow and get up, because you've been doing it for a long time.
Of course, now the question that has to follow that has to be, why choose Rwanda? And B, I think this is where you come in.
Oh, there's so many reasons why. I mean, if you look at the leadership here, President Kagame and his vision for the future and for society, and the fact that it's already leading the way in creating a smart city, it was open to the solution. President Kagame and Muhtar Ken, our chairman and CEO, sat down over a year ago over lunch and had a vision towards driving this catalyst for change. And to be able to sit here and realize it and see it come to life, I think makes us all very proud. But Rwanda, it's the people. It is the people, it's the leadership.
At the World Economic Forum, Ericsson again signed something with the government of Rwanda.
Yes.
Are we about to be seeing more of these rollouts? Is Rwanda the place to be?
Absolutely. I mean, Rwanda, the vision here is so invigorating, it's so enlightening for the African continent. And when you see all other heads of states looking at Rwanda as this test case of excellence, the center of excellence, and how do we take this, bottle it, and scale it with as much speed as is possible. I mean, you talk about the announcement that we made in Rwanda. The Ericsson launched what is called the interoperability switch. So to explain that, it's the ability for various financial organizations to be able to transact. So when we talk about visions such as the cashless society, enabling that inclusion, this is Rwanda spearheaded these engagements along with us, and we innovate collectively. So how do we then take that and then scale that? So it's easy to do things in Rwanda when it comes to the ICT agenda, because they embrace it, and the minister is one of the most admired, I'd say, yes, ministers, I would say even globally, yes, because it's really passionate about this, and he understands that this is a driver of growth for the youth. That's why it's so amazing that they paired those two elements together in his portfolio.
Definitely.
Well, I can contribute from the perspective of a smaller company. When we registered the company, it took us exactly 24 hours to become operational. Now tell me any other country where this works. 24 hours. I couldn't believe it, and it was done in 24 hours. That's one thing. And for entrepreneurs like us, time is of the essence, right? We don't have time to lose. The second thing is, people here, they take reliability, they take responsibility, and they don't take it easy, they mean it serious. And that is something which very much impresses me, I have to say. The third thing is, we are investing, so we want our investment to be safe. And it is very well protected from a policy and regulatory point of view. So that's the third advantage. But I would absolutely agree with you. In the end of the day, it's all about the people. Yes. Because we don't operate as a foreign company, we operate with a local team, and the local team has local leadership. We are not taking the leadership. It's the local people who take the leadership. And without them, we would be nowhere.
True. B, just coming back to you, you do talk about the president for Coca-Cola coming here just on Monday to launch the initiative. But scalability, are we about to move this to the next level?
Yes, our vision is to keep going, and we already have 23 of the centers in Rwanda, but Rwanda is where we're expanding and looking at a full ecosystem, so adding on the extra elements. So how do we do that between number 23 and number 35 plus? And it is about the people. I met Avery, the young gentleman here from Rwanda who's helping to run the center. Phenomenal. You could see he had the respect of his community. He was able to go in and show us the tour of what was going on. And he was just brilliant. And then Genevieve, who is, I'm probably pronouncing her name wrong, so I apologize. She's the woman entrepreneur, and to look at the opportunity that she's about to realize, she'll be making roughly 200 euros per month on this. She'll be one of the highest paid retailers in this type of a business.
Scalability?
No, absolutely. I mean, when you look at the maths and you say 70% of the population currently lives in rural areas, and if you're able to make 200 euro, I mean, that is becoming something quite substantial. So it is important to keep exploring these type of business models and keep taking various solutions that have been tried and tested and continue the momentum. Now is not the time to slow down.
Yes.
Andreas, do you get the sense that in the near future, maybe the demand will be overwhelming?
Yeah, that will not happen because Africa, like any other continent, is very hungry for energy. Yeah?
Yes.
This is not an Africa-specific phenomenon. As soon as you have energy, you need more. And right now, people have energy for their private use. Yeah? So they run a TV, they run a laptop, they can charge their mobile phone. But the next thing, and that is where the ecocenter comes into place, is productive use. And that is something that should not be put under the table, that all of these ecocenters allow for productive use, meaning other businesses can come next to us and they subscribe energy from us, and then they can run their businesses. And this will contribute to economic thrive in the community. And this is the triple bottom impact that we so much desire. So scaling, yes. Is it the time for scaling? Yes. And you know, you ask me as a German, I love factories, I love mass production, and we are ready for it.
But a recent report by PwC pointed out that for Africa to actually electrify, we need to be looking at off-grid solutions, which is where we're heading with the three partners and plus others. But don't you get the sense that, yes, you're producing the few kilowatt hours, 400,000 kilowatt hours, but don't we need more? Don't we need more of these to be rolled out in the near future?
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why I say you need more partners. The more people who have a seat at the table, the better. Because we can't stop at just our vision. I'm sure there's a vision we haven't even thought of that's even grander. And it's critical, as you said, for the people to actually have the lights. You want light for the world because that's what drives people to be able to educate themselves and be able to study. It allows for people to get together and celebrate weddings. As we drove through the city earlier, I saw 2 weddings, and I thought, imagine if they had that at night at one of the eco centers, once that's fully realized. How beautiful. So I just think there's so much opportunity, and I think you're right. We have to keep going. We have to get more people to have a seat at the table. I think we're very fortunate that the multiple African governments believe in connecting and bringing light to the world.
70% of the populations are actually in the rural areas, like you did mention. Don't we need to be seeing these more of these initiatives, at least in the rural?
Absolutely. The commercial model is something that we cannot look at business in the same way as we have to take that risk and that foresight of saying, how do we do things differently? I mean, for us, for instance, when we looked at the R&D spend, it was important that we said, how do we then bring not necessarily low cost, high efficiency or low energy utilized radio base stations, and how do we find those solutions that require less planning, that require less installation, that require less resources just to implement. And this is one of the things that we would like to see rolled out more with some of our partners, such as Tigo, such as MTN, etc.
Andreas?
Well, it's a simple equation. There's the power plants, and they will do the mass manufacturing or the mass supply of energy, and they are needed for productive use, for factories, for kickstarting local manufacturing in Africa, which is still a big bottleneck, and we will overcome this. Yeah? There's a place for the off-grid and the decentralized energy distribution, and this is where we come into place, because we enhance and we embrace the people. Not everybody's going to live in the city. And where we end up, if everybody wants to go to a city, we are very aware of that. We don't want that to happen. Yeah? We want the rural areas to thrive. So we have to have a specific energy solution for them. And that's something, I really give you credit for this. Yeah? I'm looking at you now, because you're not an energy company, but you you have understood this so well, and that's why you approached us. And you as Ericsson, you've been there from the get-go because you know that all your towers, they are in rural areas and they need energy supply. And that's what we do.
Yeah.
And we do it together.
We had a study that showed that by 2021, 70% of people would be moving from rural areas into the urban areas. Now, is that the best way for sustainable growth? And it's important that we empower and we create these solutions and we expand them in order to make sure that it's equitable going forward and our cities are also then sustainable in the right way.
You have mentioned studies, and Africa does have a very young population. You're looking at over 80% under 35 years, at least for Sub-Saharan Africa. How does this fit into the model?
I think that's a beautiful model for success. Youth breeds innovation, and innovation breeds sustainability and success.
The workforce.
So, and workforce,
Yeah.
that's right. And if you look at, unemployment rates, actually Rwanda has one of the lowest unemployment rates. And so you see people here thriving and working. And if you can take this model and replicate it and bring it into the rural areas, that's going to create a better society.
Tumi, Eco
Yes.
Center, 70% of the population. Ericsson.
Absolutely. I love the idea when you used your children in terms of whether they want to do homework, etc. Africa, for it to move forward, we need to create more of a knowledge society, the knowledge workforce. And this is one great example of how do we then do that. I mean, with Ericsson, we've been doing a number of initiatives around things such as Connect to Learn, where 70,000 young women across the globe, and a large percentage of those in Africa, having access to these solutions. So this is so critical. I mean, we talk about sustainable development goals, but ICT is one element that is front and center to this. So it is important.
Andreas, I want to pick your brain on something. President Paul Kagame is revered across the continent, and this makes, for lack of a better line, it makes your work a bit easier when it comes to many of these initiatives. Because if he sees something that is benefiting his country, he'll spend a sleepless night to make it happen.
Absolutely true.
How hard is it for other countries? I won't mention names, but how hard is it for, I think, let me throw this to all of you, to implement some of these initiatives across Sub-Saharan Africa, where the presidents are not per se the same?
Okay, you looked at me, so I might as well start. I think it's also the easiest for me to start because we are a small company. We have a low profile. We are very hands-on, and we are not looking for leadership recognition from the get-go. We first want to start implement, work our way up, and
Deliver.
once we are ready to scale, then we are looking for that kind of recognition. So, and then there's various ways of doing it and various ways of working together with the government. And in Rwanda, that is a recipe for success. And I also anticipate that in other jurisdictions, the people, they are very much looking to Rwanda and they say, wow, they have it covered.
Yeah.
They have it solved. So we have to change. We have to adapt because in the end of the day, everybody wants to have that success story that Rwanda is not just now, but currently undergoing.
Definitely.
Yes.
I want to pick your brains on the same.
Well, I'll just add, I think if you look at governments across the continent, the governments are made up of people. They're not just buildings without individuals sitting inside. And in many cases, those people are from these local communities. And so if you can find that one individual within that government to have a seat at the table to help us build the program together, that's all it takes is one individual. And so it's not easy. It comes with its complexity. But I think we have been able to find that one individual across many different places.
To me,
No, I mean, the Smart Africa Alliance is one great example of how this is now starting to gain momentum. We are really at the beginning of something great, something big, and it's something that we should embrace and encourage. I think challenges, will they exist? Of course they'll exist. But now that we've got real good proof points, and President Kagame is really, flying the flag for Africa here, and it's important that we revere that and we get others on board and with speed and show more proof points such as this and encourage more partnerships and include more people inside of the ecosystem so that we all bring our strengths. So we are at the beginning of something amazing.
Okay, we have mentioned numerous challenges, but how about the solutions? Maybe let me start with you. How did you overcome some of these? And the ones that you are facing right now, still facing the challenges, how do you plan on overcoming them?
Okay, so it's a mixture of two things. And this is where we are all completely aligned. I think in all our respective fields, we have our technology part very much figured out. And that's the first thing that you really need to make sure. But then you have to intertwine it with the right people to execute. Because in the end of the day, and I'm very glad you brought up the name, yeah, it's about that Jeanette, the operator of that eco-center. Without her, we would be nobody. If she wouldn't understand the technology, if she wouldn't be business savvy, but if she also wouldn't be an integral part of the community, even big companies would not go anywhere. We're nothing without the people. So it's technology, that needs to be covered, and we are all pretty good in that, and then it's about the people. And together, we succeed.
Yes. I think that's perfectly said.
Yeah.
It really is. It's all about the people. And every individual that I met when I went to the site this morning, I found that they each knew their area very well. They were experts. They also, though, could talk to the whole ecosystem. And they were the ones who were solving the problems on the ground. They were the ones who said, we know that this unit over here might malfunction or do this, so I'm going to make sure I put something in place to correct that so it doesn't happen. It was beautiful to see how they were working together.
Okay.
I think also one other element that is important is that we need to continue monitoring and ensuring that some of these practices or some of these engagements that we're doing, that we learn from them. Like, what are the things that didn't work, and how do we then remove some of those challenges going forward? And the next implementation just becomes faster and less costly, and we can see greater scale at a faster rate.
And that's cross-training the teams. So part of what we do is we bring the teams who have already implemented one system over to see the new ones and to be able to share those best practices and learnings.
Andreas did mention something about Ericsson realizing that, okay, they are the power gurus. Bring them in, bring Ericsson on, bring Coca-Cola sourcing all this. And that brings me back to an eco-center that you did try, and you did try to do everything on your own. And maybe that wasn't very successful, but I don't know, for lack of a better word.
Yes.
But is this the way to actually go forward, to move many of these initiatives, to source someone who is good at what they do and move the agenda forward?
Yes, I can share a real live example that I don't think Andreas will mind me sharing. Before we met, we both had this common vision of bringing this type of system to the world, calling it different names. We started with a 20-foot maritime container, very heavy. So think about those containers that you see on the trucks driving by. We thought, well, that'll be a sturdy unit that we can bring into the community. Well, logistically, that's a nightmare. You can't do that. So the first one we placed, we also had, all this crazy stuff. It was probably not exactly what the community needed or wanted.
Okay.
So we found very quickly, and that was luckily only one, but doing it on our own did not make sense. Finding the right partners with that common vision and purpose, engaging individuals who are experts in the places we were not. And that, I will say, was probably our biggest learning, was trying not to do it all ourselves.
To me?
I couldn't have said it better, Bees.
So are we about to be seeing community inclusive initiatives for them to actually work? Because when you mention many of these people, you actually know their names.
Yes.
And that's what strikes me. You're not in an office somewhere signing checks. You know their names. You've been there, and you know, oh, this one does this, the other does the other. Is this the recipe for success? Maybe let's start with Andreas.
Again, it has a lot to do with technology. This kind of technology allows us to be in the field and do very sophisticated transactions, financial transactions, educational transactions, content transactions in a safe environment because of the appliances that we work with. I mean, our eco-centers, they're equipped with quite tech-savvy appliances. And again, that needs energy, it needs connectivity, and that has been figured out. It was not there 10 years ago, it is there now, and that's why we can move from the cities into the field and do the same work that we used to do in offices.
To me?
Yes.
No, I completely agree with that. I think it is important, again, just to ensure that inclusiveness. When you speak about Jeanette, you think about these are the people that eventually implement some of these engagements, and that component it goes hand in glove with any technology or any solution. So that cross-breeding, that cross-training, that monitoring, how does then that solution then evolve going forward? Because challenges will change. Different solutions will then have to be brought in. So it is important then that other element is also thought of. And then
Andrea Spies from Solar Kiosk, founder and CEO. We do have also Bea Perez. She's the Chief Sustainability Officer for Coca-Cola, and Tumi Chemiyu, the Vice President Marketing and Strategy for Ericsson. Thank you again for making time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.